What happens when an entire country mistakes construction for prosperity? You get China in 2025. A nation with 90 million empty homes, while young people spend 60 to 80% of their income on tiny studios in Tier 1 cities. National Bureau of Statistics data showed 90 million empty homes in 2025, enough to shelter all of Germany's population. Despite sustained price declines, average home prices fell 3.2% annually in 2024. Vacancy rates remain sky-high, creating a paradox that defies basic economic logic. This isn't just an economic disaster. It's a social catastrophe that's reshaping Chinese society in ways no one predicted. The scale of this crisis becomes clear when you examine the numbers behind it. The numbers that don't add up. Government and industry estimates place the figure at 90 million empty homes across China in 2025, climbing from 65 to 80 million just a few years earlier, according to Reuters. Picture every single person in Germany moving into these vacant Chinese apartments. That's the scale we're dealing with. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They represent entire city blocks with no lights on at night. Developments where the only footsteps belong to security guards making their rounds. The absurdity hits you when you realize that despite vacancy rates nearing 20% in Beijing, prices eased only modestly following rate cuts, reflecting persistent investor demand even as record numbers of units sit empty. In Shanghai's prime districts, real estate agents report vacancy rates in the mid-teens to low 20%. Walk through these neighborhoods at night, and you'll see towering residential buildings with maybe one or two windows lit per floor. The pattern repeats across Beijing's premium areas, where newly constructed housing sits empty, yet a modest two-bedroom apartment costs more than what most Chinese families earn in a decade. Zhong Wei, a 28-year-old graphic designer in Beijing, shares a 400-square-foot apartment with 3 roommates. Like many renters in Tier 1 cities who spend 60 to 80% of their income on housing, his monthly rent consumes most of his salary, and he's been on a waiting list for affordable housing for 4 years. From his tiny shared room, he can see a 40-story residential tower where fewer than half the apartments show any signs of life. The building completed construction in 2023, with units priced at 15 million yuan each, roughly $2.1 million. Zhang's situation isn't unique. Across China's Tier 1 cities, young professionals report similar struggles, often living in subdivided apartments or co-living spaces that would have been considered substandard just a generation ago. The government's intervention attempts have produced the opposite of their intended effect. The 2024 housing stimulus package, which included reduced down payment requirements and relaxed purchase restrictions, actually accelerated the problem. Instead of making housing more accessible to regular citizens, the measures enabled wealthy investors to acquire even more properties as investment vehicles. Data from the China Real Estate Information Corporation shows that 40% of new apartment purchases in major cities went to buyers who already owned 3 or more properties. These investors have no intention of occupying or renting out their acquisitions. They're simply parking money in concrete and steel. This pattern extends beyond residential housing into commercial spaces. Beijing's Sanlitun area, once considered prime real estate, now has entire shopping complexes sitting empty on their upper floors. The ground-level retail spaces remain occupied, but floors 2 through 6 of many buildings house nothing but vacant office suites and unused restaurant spaces. Property management companies hire skeleton crews to maintain these spaces, running air conditioning and lighting systems in empty buildings to prevent deterioration. The social implications run deeper than economics. Li Ming, a 32-year-old teacher in Shanghai, represents a growing demographic of Chinese citizens who have fundamentally altered their life plans due to housing reality. She's abandoned the traditional goal of homeownership, choosing instead to remain single rather than burden a potential spouse with impossible financial expectations. Her parents, who saved for decades to help with a down payment, watch their carefully accumulated wealth lose purchasing power as housing prices outpace their savings. Li's story repeats across millions of Chinese families, creating a generation gap not just in values but in basic life possibilities. The government's 2024 rescue measures included attempts to convert empty commercial spaces into affordable housing and tax penalties for property speculation. These policies generated impressive headlines but minimal real-world impact. The commercial to residential conversion program managed to create just 180,000 affordable units nationwide, while the speculation tax proved easy to circumvent through shell companies and family member transfers. Meanwhile, vacancy rates in major cities continued climbing, reaching levels that would trigger housing market collapse warnings in any other country. What makes 2025 particularly significant is the acceleration of existing trends rather than their reversal. Construction crews complete new residential towers monthly, adding to the inventory of vacant units even as demand from actual residents remains flat or declining. The Shenzhen Housing Authority reported that 2024 saw the completion of 85,000 new residential units, while only 31,000 families registered for public housing assistance. The math simply doesn't work. Supply continues expanding exponentially, while genuine demand grows marginally. Local governments find themselves trapped in a system they created but cannot control. Municipal revenue still depends heavily on land sales to developers, creating perverse incentives to approve new construction projects regardless of actual housing needs. Mayors and party officials face performance evaluations based partly on construction activity and property tax revenue, making it politically dangerous to slow development even when cities are drowning in vacant housing. The most striking evidence of the crisis becoming unsustainable appears in the financial sector. Banks report that 23% of their loan portfolios consist of real estate-related debt, much of it secured by properties that generate no rental income and have questionable resale value. Insurance companies that invested heavily in real estate are beginning to write down asset values, acknowledging that many properties will never generate their projected returns. The ripple effects extend to construction companies, steel producers, and cement manufacturers, all of whom built capacity based on unsustainable demand projections. By the end of 2025, China's housing crisis has evolved from a problem of overbuilding to a fundamental threat to social stability. The disconnect between housing supply and actual human need has reached proportions that defy economic logic. Cities across the country now feature entire districts where buildings outnumber residents by ratios that would seem impossible in any functional housing market. But the true scale of this waste becomes clear when you examine the most spectacular examples of excess, luxury developments that cost billions to build and now stand as monuments to misplaced ambition. New monuments to excess. In Shenyong's outskirts, the state guest mansions stand as perhaps the most spectacular example of this disconnect. This $238 million luxury retreat was designed for China's elite to escape urban congestion. Construction began in 2010 with European-style mansions featuring marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and grand spiral staircases. Each mansion cost over $850,000 to build. Construction halted less than 2 years later, leaving a $250 million ghost town where cattle now graze between ornate gardens that were never completed. The mansions that were finished contained sheets of dust covering expensive leather furniture imported from Italy that no one has ever used. Roads designed for luxury vehicles have been converted into vegetable patches by local farmers. The development's elaborate entrance gates remain locked, protecting empty buildings from visitors who have no reason to enter. Security guards patrol the perimeter of a community that exists only in architectural blueprints, maintaining facilities for residents who never materialized. 3 hours southeast, Evergrande's Grande Fairland in Jiangsu represents another monument to misplaced ambition. This 263-acre theme park was designed to rival Disneyland Shanghai, complete with fairy tale castles, elaborate water features, and themed entertainment districts. The park's centerpiece castle rises 7 stories above manicured grounds that maintenance crews still tend despite the complete absence of visitors. Construction teams spent 4 years perfecting details like hand-painted murals and imported European stonework for attractions that have never operated. The park's elaborate sound systems play cheerful background music to empty pathways. Carousel horses remain frozen in place, their painted smiles facing vacant seating areas. The park's restaurants feature fully equipped kitchens that have never prepared a meal, their stainless steel surfaces reflecting fluorescent lights that illuminate dining rooms with no diners. Maintenance staff test ride safety systems weekly, ensuring perfect operation for attractions that serve no guests. Grande Fairland's most surreal feature is its operational complexity despite having no customers. The park employs 120 maintenance workers who arrive each morning to clean restrooms no one uses, sweep pathways no one walks, and maintain landscaping no one sees. The staff operates on the same schedule they would maintain for a functioning theme park, opening gates at 9 a.m. for visitors who never arrive and closing them at sunset after a day of serving no one. The park's elaborate water features run continuously, their pumps circulating thousands of gallons through fountains and artificial streams that create beauty for maintenance crews alone. The development's parking lots remain empty except for staff vehicles, their painted lines marking spaces for cars that never arrive. Street lamps illuminate empty sidewalks every night, their sensors detecting movement only when security guards make their rounds. In Inner Mongolia, the Kangbashi district of Ordos represents perhaps the most famous example of China's ghost city phenomenon. This new urban center was designed to house 1 million residents in a carefully planned community featuring wide boulevards, modern apartment complexes, and extensive public facilities. The district includes a massive government complex, cultural centers, and shopping districts that were built to serve a population that never materialized. Today, Kangbashi's broad avenues remain largely empty except for the occasional taxi or delivery vehicle. The district's apartment buildings show occupancy rates below 10%, their darkened windows creating an eerie checkerboard pattern against the night sky. The government complex operates with skeleton staff, its elaborate conference rooms and administrative offices designed for bureaucrats who work elsewhere. The district's cultural center hosts performances for audiences that rarely exceed a few dozen people in venues designed for thousands. The most striking aspect of these developments is their continued operation despite having no purpose. Kangbashi's public transportation system runs on schedule, with buses traveling predetermined routes that serve virtually no passengers. The district's traffic lights change colors for intersections where no traffic exists. Street cleaning crews maintain spotless conditions on roads that see minimal use, their efforts creating perfect urban infrastructure for a city that exists primarily on paper. These projects represent more than architectural excess. They demonstrate the complete disconnection between construction activity and human need. The state guest mansions consumed resources that could have housed thousands of families in functional apartments. Grande Fairland's construction budget could have funded affordable housing developments across multiple cities. Kangbashi's infrastructure investment could have improved existing urban areas where millions of people actually live. The maintenance costs alone reveal the scale of this waste. The three developments combined employ over 400 full-time staff members who service facilities that generate no revenue and serve no residents. These workers maintain perfect conditions in spaces designed for human activity that never occurs. They clean buildings that don't get dirty, repair infrastructure that doesn't wear out from use, and operate systems that serve no functional purpose. Unfinished projects have caused payment boycotts, with 320 projects in 2022 facing mortgage strikes according to S&P Global. An estimated 20 million people are paying mortgages on unfinished homes, creating a generation of homeowners who own nothing but debt obligations. These mortgage holders continue making payments on properties they may never occupy, while the developments they purchased into join the ranks of China's architectural monuments to excess. The psychological impact on nearby residents adds another layer of absurdity to these developments. People living in overcrowded conditions can see empty luxury developments from their apartment windows, creating daily reminders of the system's fundamental dysfunction. But the true irony of China's housing crisis becomes apparent when you examine how this oversupply coexists with skyrocketing rental costs in the same cities where millions of apartments sit vacant. The rental paradox. Walk through Shanghai's financial district at night, and you'll witness the most backwards housing market in history. Rental prices climb 15% annually, while 90 million apartments sit empty. A 300-square-foot studio rents for $1,200 per month. 5 blocks away stands a 50-story residential tower where only 30% of units show lights after dark. The remaining 70% aren't broken or uninhabitable. They're investment properties whose owners refuse to rent them out. Wang Mei owns 47 apartments across 3 Shanghai developments. She's never rented a single one. Wang works as a financial advisor and views her apartments the same way Americans might view gold bars, stores of value that shouldn't be touched. She pays property management fees on all 47 units, costing her roughly $94,000 annually. The apartments could generate $564,000 in rental income each year, but Wang considers tenants a liability. Renters might damage the properties, reducing their resale value. They might refuse to leave when she wants to sell. They might cook foods that create lingering odors. Wang prefers her apartments pristine and empty. This apartment hoarding has created artificial scarcity in cities drowning in housing surplus. Chen Lu, a 26-year-old software engineer, pays 72% of her monthly salary for a shared bedroom in a converted office building. From her single window, she can see 3 residential towers completed in the past 2 years. Chan counted the lit windows during evening hours and estimates that fewer than 40% of the apartments are occupied. She applied to rent units in all 3 buildings. Property managers told her the owners weren't interested in tenants. The apartment hoarding trend has accelerated as traditional investment options have become less reliable. Stock market volatility and government crackdowns on various industries have pushed wealthy Chinese toward real estate as the safest wealth preservation method. Lu Xing, a businessman in Guangzhou, owns 23 apartments across 4 developments. He bought them not for income but as inflation protection. Lu treats his apartment portfolio like a wine collection, meant to appreciate over time, not to be consumed. He visits each property monthly to ensure they remain in perfect condition, taking photos to document their pristine state. Property management companies have adapted their business models to serve empty apartments. Sunshine Property Management in Beijing reports that 60% of their clients are investment property owners who never intend to rent out their units. The company offers specialized services for vacant apartments, including monthly deep cleaning, appliance maintenance, and even staged photography sessions to document the property's condition for insurance purposes. They employ staff whose primary job is maintaining apartments that no one lives in. Zhong Wei, a 29-year-old teacher, shares a 200-square-foot room with his girlfriend in a building that was originally designed as office space. Their room has no windows and no private bathroom. Zhong can see a luxury residential complex from the building's stairwell where maybe 20% of units appear occupied. He's calculated that the monthly property management fees on a single empty apartment in that complex exceed his monthly rent. The visible waste of housing resources while he struggles to afford basic shelter has affected his mental health and his relationship. This two-tier system has created a visible wealth gap that's impossible to ignore. Wealthy investors store money in empty homes, while working professionals live in conditions that would have been considered temporary just a generation ago. The inequality isn't abstract. It's visible from every window in China's major cities. Entire city blocks go dark at night, while nearby buildings house multiple families in single rooms. Some cities have entire districts where the majority of residential buildings remain dark after business hours. Beijing's Chaoyang district includes several blocks where fewer than 30% of apartments show signs of occupancy during evening hours. These areas have functioning infrastructure, streetlights, traffic signals, and public transportation, but they lack the human activity that would make them actual neighborhoods. Convenience stores operate at a loss because there aren't enough residents to support normal business. Restaurants close early because dinner crowds never materialize. The paradox has worsened significantly in 2025 as more investors have entered the apartment hoarding market. Real estate agencies report that 43% of apartment purchases in Tier 1 cities go to buyers who already own multiple properties. These buyers specifically request units in buildings with low occupancy rates, believing that empty buildings suffer less wear and tear. Some investors coordinate purchases to acquire entire floors of residential towers, ensuring that their investments remain surrounded by other empty units. Professional property management has evolved to accommodate this bizarre market. Companies now offer investment property maintenance services that cost more than many families' monthly rent. These services include weekly inspections, monthly professional cleaning, quarterly appliance testing, and annual renovation assessments. The goal is maintaining apartments in showroom condition indefinitely, regardless of whether anyone will ever live in them. The rental market has responded to artificial scarcity by creating increasingly cramped living arrangements. Co-living companies have divided standard apartments into micro-units as small as 80 square feet. These companies charge premium prices for spaces that would have been considered storage closets in previous decades. Meanwhile, investors continue purchasing full-size apartments to leave empty, creating a market where the wealthy consume housing space they don't use while others pay premium prices for minimal space. Local governments face impossible choices when addressing this paradox. Taxing vacant properties might force some investors to rent out their units, but it could also crash property values that support municipal budgets. Some cities have experimented with vacancy penalties, but investors simply register family members as nominal tenants while keeping the apartments functionally empty. The apartment hoarding phenomenon has transformed housing from a basic human need into a commodity for wealth preservation, creating a system where millions of homes exist solely to store money rather than house people. But the rental crisis represents only one dimension of China's housing catastrophe. The deeper tragedy lies with those who believed they were buying into the system, only to discover they had purchased something that would never exist. The unfinished lives. Li Wei teaches mathematics at a middle school in Wuhan. He's 32 years old, unmarried, and has been paying a mortgage for 8 years on an apartment that doesn't exist. In 2017, Li put down 300,000 yuan, his entire life savings plus money borrowed from his parents, for a 2-bedroom unit in the Golden Future development. The developer showed him detailed floor plans, 3D renderings, and promised completion by 2019. Li signed the contract and began monthly mortgage payments of 3,200 yuan. Construction stopped in 2020. The site now hosts a partially built concrete shell surrounded by rusted construction equipment and weeds growing through the foundation. Li continues making mortgage payments because Chinese law requires it. The pre-sale system allows developers to sell apartments before construction begins, but buyers remain legally obligated to pay mortgages even if developers abandon projects. Li's bank holds the mortgage contract, not the building contract. From the bank's perspective, Li borrowed money and must repay it regardless of whether he received an apartment. Li has spent 307,200 yuan over 8 years on a home that exists only in marketing materials. His mortgage statements show he still owes 520,000 yuan on property he's never seen completed. The psychological toll affects every aspect of Li's life. He can't move to a different city for better job opportunities because he's tied to mortgage payments in Wuhan. He can't save money for other goals because 45% of his income goes to a phantom apartment. Lee's girlfriend left him in 2022 after realizing their relationship had no future while he remained financially trapped. His parents, both retired factory workers, used their pension savings to help with the down payment. They now live with guilt about contributing to their son's financial prison. Lee represents 25 million Chinese citizens trapped in similar situations. These mortgage orphans pay monthly installments on properties that range from completely unbuilt to partially constructed shells. The presale system, designed to help developers finance construction, has created a legal framework where buyers assume all risk while developers face minimal consequences for non-completion.